Chapter 118. Excellent benefits. Even the third-layer Qi practitioner Diao Fei's palms became covered in cold sweat. Within 3 steps, he would not even have the time to activate his talisman against an enemy like that. He felt extremely fortunate that he had not fallen out with Li Qingshan. 7 under the guidance of an attendant, the 3 of them climbed the tall stairs. Diao Fei and Qian Rongji followed behind Li Qingshan conscientiously. Afterwards, they passed through a long corridor. Over a dozen Black Wolf guards parted to make way for them. Li Qingshan could clearly see that there were both men and women among them. There were young people in their 20s, but there were plenty of middle-aged people and even elderly people. They were also observing Li Qingshan. Under the gloomy, rainy weather, the various expressions in Li Qingshan's head blurred together. He was in no mood to remember them. All he could do was silently estimate their strength. Most of them were at the 3rd layer, while there were relatively few at the 2nd and 4th layer. He did not see any 5th layer Qi practitioners. His conclusion was that there was no one here that was particularly worthy of his attention. Strength was the best calling card for Qi practitioners. Before he knew it, Li Qingshan had also learned to use strength to evaluate a person. He directly arrived before Zhuo Zhibua and Zhou Wenbin. The powerful auras they gave off could not be ignored. Zhuo Zhibua glanced past the 3 of them. His gaze paused slightly on Li Qingshan's face before smiling amiably. Congratulations. From today onwards, you've become a member of the Hawkwolf Guard. You've all done extremely well. The welcoming banquet will begin soon. Little Go, take them to collect their items. Yes, Commander. A short, nimble Qi practitioner answered. He had a rather baby-like face, but he had a beard above his lips. He seemed rather comical, but he was very likable. Zhou Wenbin said, Commander Zhua, I won't disturb you any longer. Farewell. He did not mention the matter of the spiritual stones, as he knew that Zhuo Zhibua would naturally deliver them to him once he returned. If he asked about it in front of a group of Black Wolf guards right now, it would be far too disrespectful and overbearing. Zhuo Zhibua pretended to keep him and accompanied Zhou Wenbin down the stairs politely. Before Zhou Wenbin left, he did not forget to say to Li Qingshan and the others, "Oh right, don't forget to report this to the district office." Nominally, the district magistrate was still the highest authority in Jiaping. He had the right to deploy the Hawkwolf Guard and assist with governance. As a result, whenever a new Hawkwolf Guard was added, they would have to report it to the government office. Although the Hawkwolf Guard had the right to supervise, they could not directly defy the district magistrate's orders. As a result, they kept each other in check. In reality, who was strong and who was weak depended on one's own skill and strength. Although the words were said to the 3 of them, everyone could feel that it was specifically for Li Qingshan. County Magistrate Zhou was very interested in it. Under the lead of Little Go, Li Qingshan finally managed to venture into the depths of the Hawkwolf Guard. There were exquisite, luxurious pavilions, terraces, and buildings. They seemed more like the palaces of royalty than a government office. The azure-clad attendants that Xiao Chen met along the way no longer had any arrogance. Instead, they were extremely respectful. Xiao Gu was very good at talking. Along the way, he introduced the names and functions of the various buildings, as well as all kinds of anecdotes and stories. He kept asking Li Qingshan how he built them. It was just a coincidence. Li Qingshan smiled. He already knew that Xiao Ji's name was Gu Jian, and he was actually over 30 years old. The reason why Xiao Gu was so friendly was definitely related to the strength he had demonstrated just now. Although he was cautious, it was always a good thing to be treated as an equal. Gu Jian said, there aren't a lot of people who practice this nowadays. There are a few methods of practicing the body in the collection, and they've almost gone moldy. However, I never thought they would actually be so powerful. Even I'm interested in practicing them. You have to teach me properly when the time comes. He was just joking around. Although body practitioners seemed like they were equal to Qi practitioners, that was just people who practiced the body trying to flatter themselves. It was not some hidden, powerful occupation. It was just like the Daoist ability of the 9 oxen and 2 tigers. Most ancient cultivation methods were lost because they were unsuitable for the times. Compared to the great power they displayed in battle, there were many more drawbacks to methods of practicing the body. Every single path was a summary of the countless experiences and lessons of predecessors. However, Li Qingshan was not human, so there was no need for him to follow the path of these former humans. Arriving in the depths of the mountain, they entered a stone building carved into the side of the mountain. Gu Jian led the three of them through a series of stone doors. Every single stone door was engraved with inscriptions. Even spiritual artifacts could not break through it. This was the treasury of the Hawkwolf Guard. To the Hawkwolf Guard, no amount of treasure was worth protecting like this, unless they were items that possessed spirits. Gu Jian chose 2 sets of black wolf uniforms for each of them in the treasury first. Li Qingshan touched the glossy material gently. After Gu Jian's introduction, he learned that it was made from black silk. It was fireproof and waterproof, and even crossbows could not pierce through it. This was the best set of clothes he had ever worn in both of his lives. However, he did not mind too much. With his ox demon forge as its hide, he had never been afraid of crossbows. If this was the benefit of joining the Hawkwolf Guard, then it would be a little disappointing. However, Diao Fei and Qian Rongji did not show any disappointment at all. They held the black wolf uniform like it was a treasure as their minds wandered. Qian Rongji's heart was filled with both resentment and joy. If she returned to ancient Wind City in this set of clothes, then those old coots would learn to respect her a little. All the people who had offended her and looked down on her would have to pay the price. Her hatred towards her family was actually 10 times, no, 100 times greater than the person who had killed her family, Li Qingshan. The items Gu Jian took out next completely attracted their attention. Even Li Qingshan became eager. They were 3 exquisite 100 treasures pouches. They were nothing like the piece of trash in his hand. Gu Jian passed the 100 treasures pouches to the 3 of them. There are some things in there. They're all gifts for joining the Hawkwolf Guard. Li Qingshan channeled his spiritual qi into the 100 treasures pouch and sensed that the space inside was the size of a box. It was 10 times larger than the tattered 100 treasures pouch he had obtained from Qian Rongming. It could hold weapons like blades. He could finally stuff his cursive sword calligraphy inside. There was also a bottle of pills in the 100 treasures pouch. There were at least 30 qi-gathering pills in the tiny bottle. Every single one of them was only the size of a soybean, but they were perfectly round and crystalline. They possessed extraordinary spiritual qi, and their effects surpassed regular qi-gathering pills. There were also 3 low-grade talismans. It made Li Qingshan sigh in amazement. The Hawkwolf Guard really was wealthy. They really were one of the organizations of authority in a country after all. The benefits they received were really great. Sure enough, there was a reason why so many qi practitioners would go as far as to risk their lives to join them. Then he glanced at Diao Fei and Qian Rongji beside him. They held their 100 treasures pouches and were both overjoyed as well. However, that was not all. Gu Jian brought the 3 of them to the armory and opened 3 stone doors. When the last stone door was opened, the dazzling light dazzled Li Qingshan's vision. The large armory was filled with various weapons. There were knives, spears, swords, halberds, axes, battle axes, hooks, tridents, and everything else. They flickered with light like stars. Every single one of them was a spiritual artifact. Why are there so many spiritual artifacts here? The spiritual artifacts that Qian Rongji saw right now were even more than all the spiritual artifacts she had seen in her entire life. She had grown up in ancient Wind City, so she believed the Qian family was one of the greatest clans in the world, a colossal existence that could not be overthrown. However, only after coming to the Hawkwolf Guard did she realize she was just a frog in a well. Gu Jian explained, "Over all these years, we've killed many enemies, and there were quite a few qi practitioners among them. We took their spiritual artifacts, but they were useless to us, so we handed them up and exchanged them for contribution. We tossed them all here." Li Qingshan asked, "What's contribution?" Gu Jian explained patiently. As it turned out, the official affairs of the Hawkwolf Guard were not that busy. As long as they dealt with a few cases every month, they would be free to do whatever they wanted. Whether they wanted to practice qi on the mountain or go sightseeing outside, it was all up to them. It was extremely relaxing and leisurely. However, in the Hawkwolf Guard, strength was everything. No matter how hard they worked, they could not be promoted if they were not strong enough. As a result, in order to motivate everyone's passion for work, they set up a contribution system. Every time they dealt with a case, they would receive a corresponding amount of contribution, which could be exchanged for pills, talismans, or spiritual artifacts. And the Hawkwolf Guard did not give them a salary. They did not even receive a single tael of silver. However, they would receive 10 chi gathering pills every month for cultivation. High wages, high benefits, high freedom, and bonuses. They were respected wherever they went. Apart from the boss who seemed to be slightly displeased with him, it was basically a perfect job. But if they were displeased, then they were displeased. They sent people to steal my things, so they deserved to be displeased. If they developed ill will because of this, then they had to be careful of walking at night and falling into the hands of demons. Li Qingshan smiled unconsciously, which made both Qian Rongji and Diao Fei shiver. Gu Jian said, everyone can choose one as their personal weapon. If you're not confident in your insight, I'd recommend you choose the standard wind entwining blade. Hurry up. We still need to look at the houses later. The three of them immediately began to choose eagerly. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to choose a heavy weapon, the heavier the better. Originally, he had already taken a fancy to a huge, long-handled axe. However, with a thought, he directly went to the weapons rack to the west and chose a wind entwining blade. He drew the blade from its sheath. The patterns on it were densely packed, and it shone with a cold light. It was obvious that it had never been used before. It was brand new and shiny. The mouth was engraved with inscriptions. As long as he channeled true qi into it, he could unleash wind blades. It could be regarded as a well-made low-grade spiritual artifact. Gu Jian gave him a thumbs up, praising his choice. Li Qingshan smiled back. He was extremely satisfied with the wind entwining blade as well, but it was not because he was not confident in his insight. There was a certain level of care in choosing what weapon to use. Right now, it was no longer the time for him to trample over the Black Wind stronghold. Weapons that were too large could not be stored in his 100 treasures pouch, which made it difficult to carry around. It was very inconvenient. He had made his name with the blade in the first place, so it was perfect for him to return to the blade now. Moreover, he lacked long-range attacks right now, so he could not just show the cursive sword calligraphy to others. The wind entwining blade's wind blade technique suited him very well. Chapter 119. Hidden killing intent. Many two-storied buildings stood on the mountain, hidden among the vegetation. They seemed tranquil and elegant. These were the residences allocated to the various Hawkwolf Guards. A few had already been cleaned out, allowing the three of them to choose freely. As a result, Li Qingshan gained an even better understanding of the welfare of the Hawkwolf Guard. Gu Jian said, once you've chosen, please wash up and change your clothes. I'll come pick you up at noon. Li Qingshan chose the most tranquil building on the edge. He bid farewell to Gu Jian and walked over. There were flowers planted in front of the building, currently blooming brilliantly. Li Qingshan was not familiar with this, so he had no idea what they were. They were colorful and quite beautiful. Bees and butterflies circled around them, collecting pollen while the rain stopped. Li Qingshan stood there and admired it for a while before opening the door with a key. It was an ancient-looking room divided into two by hanging bamboo curtains. At the front was a hall for receiving guests, while at the back was a tranquil tea room. The jar on his waist moved, and Li Qingshan said, "Come on out, little one. You must be bored out." He opened the jar, and a skull flew out. The bones pieced together to form a body, standing before Li Qingshan. It shook its head at Li Qingshan, expressing that it was fine. Those who practiced the path of white bone and great beauty were neither alive nor dead, neither dead nor alive. They existed in a wondrous state, coinciding with the most profound principles of Buddhism. In terms of hiding their auras, even Li Qingshan, who practiced the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, could not compare to them, as dead people did not have auras. Little and ran over to the wall and admired the ancient paintings before nodding at Li Qingshan, expressing that they were all real. Li Qingshan held onto the stairs and climbed up. Little and followed behind him in a hurry, making his way up the stairs with a series of thumps. Smoke curled up from the red-crowned crane incense burner on the table for 8 people. The furnishings in the building were all extremely luxurious and not exposed. With a glance, one could tell that they had been designed by the best craftsmen. Any one of these items could not be bought by an ordinary person in a lifetime. Li Qingshan pushed open the window and gazed into the distance. His gaze passed through the layers of treetops, taking in the entirety of Jiaping City. Tens of thousands of households were neatly arranged like matchboxes. In the center of the city, a sparkling blue belt of water passed through the city. That was the Qing River. Compared to living in a cowshed in Crouching Ox Village, it really was like living in hell, while it was like living in heaven. This was the free and unfettered life that Qi practitioners deserved. Li Qingshan closed his eyes and took a deep breath, as if he wanted to inhale all the freedom and happiness into his stomach. The bloody fight under the dark rain was instantly far away. Little and tilted his head and looked at Li Qingshan. His eyes flickered with fire, and he was also happy for him. Li Qingshan called out to Little and sat down at the table for 8 people. Like a miser, he poured out all the items in the 200 treasures pouches and counted them carefully. He smiled from ear to ear and rubbed Little An's head. Once I officially take up my post, I'll definitely work hard and help you refine that ability as soon as possible, alright? At that time, you might even be able to refine Qi? Then I'll have to work harder and earn more Qi gathering pills. Little and nodded vigorously to express his agreement, guessing what taking up your post meant. A big monster and a little skeleton were seriously planning their lives just like that. In this aspect, they were like the most ordinary of commoners. Work hard to earn money. Earn money to marry a wife. Wait. In the end, he put everything into the new 100 treasures pouch and gave the old one to Little and, "We'll each take one. You don't have anything, so I'll use this big one. But don't worry, I'll definitely make an even better one for you in the future." The one on Zhuozhibu's waist seemed pretty good. Li Qingshan could not help but think, do I hope you come and make trouble for me? Or do I hope you don't come and make trouble for me? Little and obviously had no interest in that. He accepted the 100 treasures pouch obediently and placed the scholar with tablet inside. Li Qingshan took a comfortable hot bath and changed into the black wolf uniform. He equipped the wind-entwining blade and told Little and to look after the house before making his way out. A banquet was set up in the large hall. Zhuozhibu sat at the center, with over a dozen tables lined up on either side. 2 people sat at each table, and they were all arranged according to their cultivation. Gu Jian patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. Just bear with it for now. Because he was a first-layer Qi practitioner, he had the lowest cultivation among all the Hawkwolf guards, so he could only sit at the very back. However, everyone knew that if they actually fought, he would probably be no weaker than a third-layer Qi practitioner. Li Qingshan did not care about this. As soon as he sat down, there was a fragrance from beside him. Qian Rongji actually sat down beside him. She said charmingly, logically speaking, I'm the weakest. You've really been wronged. Li Qingshan wondered, is it really like the legends, where the colder you are to a beauty, the more coquettish a beauty will become to cling to you? However, this thought only lasted for a moment. He could not forget how this woman behaved when she achieved what she wanted. If he really could forget about her actions in the past, then that would not be forgiving. Instead, there would be something wrong with his head. It was already too late for him to put on an act now. However, since she had welcomed him with a smile, he refused to lose his bearing. He said indifferently, looks like the strong and the weak are separated everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you go. Qian Rongji did not seem to hear the sarcasm in his words. She continued to smile. She seemed to be in an extremely good mood now that she had joined the Hawkwolf Guard. Zhuozhibu arrived late. He said a few polite words and welcomed Li Qingshan and the others. Afterwards, he introduced the Hawkwolf Guards present to the 3 of them with a chuckle. Including Li Qingshan and the others, there were a total of 31 Hawkwolf Guards around Jiaping City. Apart from a few who were in secluded cultivation or out on missions, all of them were present. Under Zhuozhibua's lead, everyone raised their cups and congratulated the three of them on joining the Hawkwolf Guard. No matter how cold and arrogant they were in the past, they had all become colleagues now. Obviously, they could not argue with each other. At the very least, they could not bring their conflicts to the surface. They had to be harmonious. Of course, Li Qingshan's vague support played a relatively large role. Otherwise, someone would have come over to provoke them a long time ago. It was very impressive that Li Qingshan could instantly kill a second-layer Qi practitioner. It shocked everyone, but upon further thought, the bastard who had died was just a frightened bird. Li Qingshan was only a first-layer Qi practitioner at the end of the day. He was at the very bottom of Qi practitioners. Most of the Qi practitioners here were at the third and fourth layer, so they were not afraid of him. If a regular newcomer had behaved so arrogantly, someone would definitely have stepped forward to teach him a lesson. However, under Zhuozhibua's orders, none of them acted recklessly. However, their attitudes were rather playful and cold. As a result, not only did Li Qingshan no longer sense any hostility from Zhuozhibua, but it was the exact opposite. When he was drunk, the great commander of Jiaping City even personally walked over. Diao Fei and Qian Rongji stood up in a hurry, while Li Qingshan remained seated, which formed an extremely clear contrast. When it came to opponents like Yen Song and Lu Hong who had been defeated by him, he could take the initiative to ease their relationship. He understood the ways of the world very well. However, when facing a strong opponent like Zhuozhibua, he instead had to straighten his back. He didn't think that if he gave in now, he could change the other's impression of him. And he was also very clear about the twisted dignity of these Qi practitioners. When they were slapped in the face by the strong, they felt that they deserved it. When they were provoked by the weak, they had to be killed. On the ship, he had merely refused Qian Rongming's rude request, and Qian Rongming had ambushed and killed him in the middle of the night. Would Zhuozhibua's tolerance be any better? He had no confidence in this. A person with authority like Zhuozhibua would probably only be even more abnormal. Right now, this kind of superficial peace was only a layer of illusion maintained by Gu Yenying's reputation, and this illusion would always dissipate very quickly. He wasn't Gu Yenying's person, although he very much wanted to make Gu Yenying his one day in the future. With the experience of his two lives, Li Qingshan understood his own position extremely well. As a result, he chose the method he believed to be the most suitable. He did not rely on luck at all. In the story of the donkey running out of tricks, the donkey had relied on his extremely composed attitude to deter the tiger from attacking him recklessly. He did not mind learning from the donkey of Qian County and bluffing his superior. At the very least, he would be able to exchange for a period of peace. When the time came, he would see who was the donkey, who was the tiger, and who was running out of tricks. Zhuozhibua's smile did not fade, but his killing intent grew. He personally clinked cups with Li Qingshan and said many intimate things to him. "Qingshan, this must be the first time you've left home, right? Don't worry. Just treat the Hawkwolf Guard like a writer. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Everyone here is your brother and sister. I'm your big brother, so it's only right for me to take care of you." That was what Zhuozhibua said. Li Qingshan sneered inside. He could tell that Zhuozhibua was trying to find out about his relationship with Gu Yenying through his words. Li Qingshan had only met him once, which instead made Zhuozhibua even more suspicious. This was exactly Li Qingshan's intentions. Intelligent people would definitely be suspicious, so he was more than happy to let Zhuozhibua continue to doubt him. He understood the rate at which his strength was growing the best. Once Zhuozhibua understood the truth, just how powerful would he be? Diao Fei was extremely envious of Li Qingshan's treatment. Zhuozhibua basically did not even look at him properly, so he had no idea about the twists and turns. Zhuozhibua shot a glance at Qian Rongji before returning to his seat. Qian Rongji treated Li Qingshan even more eagerly, as if she wanted to mend her relationship with Li Qingshan. As a matter of fact, she did not even wait for the female attendants, personally pouring wine for Li Qingshan. She drank quite a lot, and the charm in her eyes seemed like it was about to drip. It attracted the gazes of many Black Wolf guards, who were envious, but they all looked away as soon as they glanced at Zhuozhibua. Li Qingshan really did not hold back. He downed the wine as soon as it was poured, enjoying her service calmly. With how sharp his senses were, he had sensed a long time ago that Qian Rongji had some dirty ties with Zhuozhibua. As it seemed, while he had been cultivating in seclusion for the past 3 days, she had not been idling around either. Sure enough, things like unwritten rules were everywhere. He felt even more disdain towards her. However, he could not be bothered with her matters. If she could be sold, then so be it. The only thing he considered was whether these two potential enemies would work together against him. Chapter 120. The tower. Although he had absolute confidence in his own strength, he did not want to be a fool with fists and no brains. He only made up nonsense about Qian Rongji's various inquiries. 7*. The banquet ended and everyone dispersed. At the highest point of the mountain, in the Black Eagle commander's personal pavilion, Zhuozhibua asked, "How was the investigation? What is the relationship between that brat and Commander Gu?" Qian Rongji sat on Zhuozhibua's lap and gritted her teeth. That brat kept beating around the bush and refused to tell the truth. As Li Qingshan expected, Qian Rongji had formed a relationship with Zhuozhibua during the 3 days she was on the mountain. Zhuozhibua said, "Then wait and see. I will figure it out. If he is really valued by that person, then you can forget about taking revenge." Qian Rongji suppressed her hatred and extended her index finger to touch Zhuozhibua's face. She smiled charmingly. "My grievances are nothing. It's not like I have enough brothers and sisters to die off. What matters is your dignity, Great Commander Zhua. You only have one face. You've seen that kid's attitude today." Zhuozhibua said, "If that person is really standing behind him, then it doesn't matter if he tramples on my face." He slapped Qian Rongji's butt hard. "You don't have to provoke me. Even if he is really valued by that person, I have a way to deal with him now. Even if he is a genius, I can still turn him into a useless person. Let's see if anyone will still take him seriously then." Qian Rongji grumbled coquettishly and wriggled about in Zhuozhibua's arms, which made his lust rise. Then he asked in confusion, "Since you don't mind him killing your elder brother, why are you so obsessed with revenge?" Qian Rongji said, "Because he looks down on me. Everyone who looks down on me has to pay the price." If Li Qingshan was here, he would definitely be dumbfounded. Not only did his attitude not attract the love of a beauty like the rumors said, but it also attracted deep hatred. It seemed that rumors were just rumors. Zhuozhibua took a deep look at Qian Rongji and did not comment. At his age, he had played with many women, but female qi practitioners were rare. Even if there were, they were not necessarily beautiful. Therefore, the first time he saw Qian Rongji, he had an idea, and Qian Rongji also wanted to take the opportunity to rise up. As the saying goes, after a while, it became adultery. His body had already started to weaken, and it was impossible for him to make any progress in qi training. All kinds of enjoyment were the first priority. Qian Rongji said, "I heard that those who train their bodies are relatively strong." That single sentence triggered Zhuozhibua's bestial nature, and he threw himself at Qian Rongji. "I'll let you taste my power today." Qian Rongji giggled. The room fell into chaos. Li Qingshan was currently submerged in a sea of books. The library of the Hawkwolf Guard contained all sorts of martial arts manuals, allowing him to browse through them freely. There were all sorts of martial arts manuals, kicks, blades, and swords. Many of them could lead to conflict in the Jianghu, yet they were like trash here, placed casually. There was only an old man watching over them. However, Li Qingshan failed to find any cultivation methods for qi practitioners. Just when he wanted to go to the second floor, he was stopped by the old man. 2 hours, 10 points of contribution. No credit. Li Qingshan could only give up. Even though they were just martial arts manuals, they gave him quite a lot of inspiration. He read through them for 2 hours, but he was afraid that little and would worry, so he returned to the residence. Afterwards, he continued with his rather dull cultivation, eating pills, and practicing qi. However, as soon as night fell, Gu Jian knocked on Li Qingshan's door and said mysteriously, "I'll take you to a good place." He even specially told him to change his clothes and stash his blade away. "Don't tell me he's trying to harm me?" That was what Li Qingshan thought, but he agreed immediately. What would come eventually. All he had to do was raise his vigilance. At most, he would just kill to his heart's content. He told Gu Jian to wait for a moment and returned to his room with little. Arriving at the gateway at the bottom of the mountain, he discovered that Diao Fei was already waiting there. Li Qingshan asked in confusion, "Where are we going?" Surely he did not want to kill Diao Fei as well. Diao Fei said, "Brother Gu said he'd take us on a stroll around the night scenery of Jiaping City." "Oh right, why aren't you bringing Chen Rongji? Places like that aren't suitable for women." Gu Jian revealed a smile that all men understood. Li Qingshan and Diao Fei looked at each other, neither saying anything. This kind of thing was not easy to refuse in the first place, not to mention that it came from the good intentions of a colleague. Li Qingshan considered himself a man who drank with women, so he did not take it too seriously. Gu Jian couldn't help but smile when he saw the two's attitudes. He then remembered Zhuo Zhibua's instructions. Regardless of the cost, they had to take Li Qingshan to have fun to their heart's content. The more fun they had, the better. It would be best if all cultivation and training were cast aside. Li Qingshan still did not know that Zhuo Zhibua had already begun to deal with him in a different way. There was no need to fight or kill to destroy a person. Many times, sugar-coated bullets were even more frightening than torture. Extravagance and debauchery could easily obliterate a person's will, causing them to wallow in their most instinctive pleasures. In Zhuo Zhibua's opinion, Li Qingshan was just a wild kid from the mountains. How could he resist this temptation? Even if Li Qingshan really did catch Gu Yenying's eye, it was not Zhuo Zhibua's fault. He could only blame Li Qingshan for being useless. This was an insidious move he had come up with based on his deep understanding of human nature. It was silent, yet it penetrated deep into the bones. Jiaping City was lit up with lanterns. Even at night, it was still brightly lit. It was very different from the small city of Qingyang, which made Li Qingshan think of the large cities from his past life. Under Gu Jian's enthusiastic greeting, the three of them merged into the light, entering the most dazzling and prosperous place. Building. This did not seem like the name of a brothel, but it was not just a brothel. It was the largest and most luxurious brothel in a radius of several hundred kilometers. From various perspectives, this was the grandest building Li Qingshan had ever seen in this world. It was a towering building in the shape of a pagoda, reaching 7 stories in height. It was so brightly lit that it seemed like it was burning. Large streams of people moved through the entrance, which was hung with large red lanterns. It was even busier than a market. Before they had even entered, a steaming, exotic fragrance assaulted their noses. Li Qingshan shrugged. "It's just a brothel." Although it was a little luxurious, it still paled in comparison to the skyscrapers and neon lights of his past life. Gu Jian said mysteriously, "You'll know once you go in. This isn't a regular brothel." Before the three of them had even entered, a person came out. He had been tossed out from the 3rd floor, landing on the ground like a sack. A murder case? Li Qingshan shivered inside. From a certain perspective, the Hawkwolf Guard was the police of this world. He never thought he would encounter a case as soon as he took up his post. However, when he looked at the passers-by in the surroundings, apart from being surprised in the beginning, they all went about their own business as if nothing had happened. Then he looked at the person on the ground. He actually stood up with a groan, rubbing his waist as he cursed aloud. An even louder curse rang out from upstairs. "What gang leader or branch leader? If you don't have any money, piss off. If you don't piss off, I'll cripple you of your martial arts and leave you as a pimp." The man who had been tossed out of the building was actually a first-rate master, which was why he was unscathed. However, just how skilled was he to toss out a first-rate master so casually? The man seemed to be stunned by the voice. He cursed a few more times before merging into the stream of people as if nothing had happened at all. Gu Jian said, "Even the Hawkwolf Guard has to pay if you want to play here. It's best if you don't cause any trouble." Li Qingshan said, "It's just a brothel. How can they be so arrogant?" Diao Fei said, "The sect is a renowned sect in the Clear River Prefecture. They're skilled in dual cultivation, and they've set up brothels in various major cities. This is only one of them. However, this is the first time I've come here. Gu Jian smiled. Diao Fei sure is knowledgeable. Qingshan, you should know what dual cultivation is, right? Isn't it just doing that? Li Qingshan truly felt like his horizons had been broadened. So be it the violent organization and the government formed by Qi practitioners, but there were actually brothels run by Qi practitioners. He could not help but lower his opinion of the three words, Qi practitioners, a little. Gu Jian said, dual cultivation is the same as external pills and ingestion. They're both extremely ancient Taoist techniques that focus on the harmony of yin and yang. However, you're not wrong. It's doing that which is the art of intercourse. Think about it, a sect that specializes in intercourse and teaches a girl, Li Qingshan grinned. Don't tell me they want to harvest yang to replenish their yin. Did Zhuo Zhibua want him to die on a woman's belly? That would be far too much of a joke. Gu Jian broke into laughter. How can that be? If that's the case, why would there still be so many people? Anyway, you'll know once you try. Li Qingshan shook his head. Forget it. He did not think that this was a good place. Diao Fei also wanted to back out. If it was an ordinary brothel, then it would be fine. He had heard many rumors about brothels. No matter when, seeking pleasure was not beneficial to the cultivation of Qi practitioners. Gu Jian moved his lips and tongue, talking nonstop. Qi refinement is so hard, shouldn't you reward yourself? Only by striking a balance between work and rest can one's cultivation be beneficial. It's fine to do it once or twice. If you're a man, then don't be so hesitant. Have a good time. As a man, why would he be afraid of a few women? He diligently played the role of the most common person in the world, a hypocrite with a honeyed mouth and a dagger in his heart. A vicious friend was more terrifying than an outstanding enemy. He persuaded, encouraged, and half-dragged the two of them into the brothel. The roar of voices filled the air. Many men and women were hugging each other in disheveled clothing. It was a scene of revelry and bliss. In this strange atmosphere, everyone had no scruples, releasing themselves to their heart's content. It was like the legendary pool of wine and forest of flesh. Even Li Qingshan, a transmigrator from the modern era, was a little dumbfounded. Uncle Gu, you've made the ladies wait for a long time. The room you booked is the first room in the sky. Please come upstairs. A fat woman with heavy makeup came up to greet them. When she saw Li Qingshan and Diao Fei, she said, "Hey, these two little brothers, you look unfamiliar." Li Qingshan saw that the lady boss's body was also flowing with true energy. She was a Qi practitioner. Chapter 121. Beating up the courtesan, Li Qingshan slapped her hand away rudely, but Gu Jian said, "If you want us to take care of you, that'll depend on what you're capable of. Don't worry, it'll all be the best. Miss Furong has already been waiting for quite some time. She's not receiving any other guests today. Who knows how many people she's offended." The sacred hall. At this moment, as if to prove her words, a skinny man grabbed the procuress' arm while wailing. "Mummy, I have to see Furong tonight. I'll give you whatever you want." However, he was immediately restrained and chased out by two sturdy guards who were second-rate at the very least. When they heard that the three of them would be accompanied by Furong, all the men became envious. Even Diao Fei, who had always been cold, became curious. The procuress chattered as she flirted with Gu Jian, shooting flirtatious glances at him. Diao Fei would listen in at times and look at the men and women in the hall from time to time. He was overwhelmed. He had cultivated arduously in the sect for many years, so it was not easy for him to see a sight like this. However, Li Qingshan raised his head and looked up. The building was built like a patio, so it was difficult to see the very top with a single glance. There were murals of flying women. From the top to the bottom of the long corridor, the sounds of singing, dancing, and orchestral instruments could be heard everywhere. The lowest floor had the most customers, and they were all hugging the lowest and most coquettish women. There was a warm atmosphere, as if it was going to overturn the roof. In a daze, Li Qingshan seemed to see the women in the paintings move. Their eyes moved about, enchanting all living things, but at a closer glance, it turned back to a regular painting. Was it just a hallucination? The best room was the highest floor of the building. It was specially reserved for esteemed guests. The 3 Qi practitioners of the Hawkwolf Guard were obviously esteemed guests. Under the procuress' lead, they climbed up the tall building and passed by room after room. With his extraordinary hearing, Li Qingshan could clearly hear the sounds of many men and women making love. It was enough to make him blush. As he sat down on the luxurious golden silk cushion, the sound of stringed instruments could be heard from behind the curtains. It was faintly captivating. Suddenly, a group of flower-like dancers came up to welcome him. They only had light muslin draped over their bodies, revealing their graceful curves and waving hips. Holy Church tasting the fine wine in his cup and appreciating the singing and dancing in front of him, an extremely faint and exotic fragrance mingled with the many fragrances of cosmetics entered Li Qingshan's nose and mouth. His mind seemed to be even more intoxicated. He just wanted to immerse himself in the spring breeze and not care about the rise and fall of the world. And among the dancers, the figure of a woman was faintly discernible. Amidst the swift and messy dance, she was like the moon surrounded by stars, but she was only faintly discernible. Even if she occasionally appeared, it was a face covered by a veil. Who was she? Could it be Hibiscus? The sound of the wind instruments suddenly rose to the sky. The dancers suddenly dispersed, and the woman appeared in front of everyone. She was the only one left on the stage, dancing passionately alone. Li Qingshan and Diao Fei watched with rapt attention, not even noticing Gu Jian's departure. Outside the corridor, Gu Jian was talking to the old procuress. "This is something arranged by our boss Zhua, you better not neglect it." The old procuress laughed. "How would I dare? Our brothel still wants to continue operating in Jiaping City. Bewitching fragrance, bewitching dance, and decadent sound, I'm using all 3 at once. I guarantee that those 2 brats will be bewitched." She glanced at Gu Jian's lower body. "Master Gu, didn't you also come out because you couldn't endure it? Do you want our hibiscus to—" Gu Jian said, "Shut up." His face was clearly a bit unnaturally red, and his emotions were a bit out of control. Clearly, those 3 things were not unaffected by him. But Zhuozhibwa had specifically said that this woman was absolutely not to be touched. She had ruined more than 1 or 2 practitioners, and there were countless ordinary people of the Jianghu. What was even more frightening was that these people actually did not regret it in the end, and were still willing to give their everything to her. At this time, in the room, the veil fell to the ground, as if it was a small accident in the midst of an intense dance. Hibiscus stood there, not knowing what to do. The music stopped just in time. The 2 men were stunned at the same time. Li Qingshan once again felt a strong sense of awe, but he could not accurately describe the woman's appearance. It was as if there was a hazy layer of fog, and within it he could faintly see Xianyue, Gu Yenying, and even further back in the past, to that ignorant first love of his previous life. The Templar's mind was bewitched, and his heart was intoxicated. Diao Fei stared straight at Hibiscus and murmured, "Ah Ning." He completely ignored the wine in his hand, which had already spilled all over the floor. Many memories surfaced in his mind, the mixture of pain and sweetness that was engraved in his bones. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to own her. Hibiscus sneered inside. Doing something like this was basically a piece of cake for her. It was extremely easy. Her target this time was only a teenager, so it was even easier. She had already begun thinking about how she could use him to earn some pills. She had heard that the treatment of the Hawkwolf Guard was quite impressive, so she should be able to squeeze quite a lot out of him. However, he was only a first-layer Qi practitioner, so he probably would not be able to last for too long. The other one, on the other hand, might be able to allow her cultivation to break through again and reach the 3rd layer. Thump, thump, thump. The jar on Li Qingshan's waist produced a few gentle sounds, rousing Li Qingshan. Little and was extremely obedient. He had never been willing to make things difficult for Li Qingshan, so he had always been extremely quiet in the jar. This was the first time something like this had happened. Li Qingshan immediately sensed that something was wrong with him. He used the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression, and the turtle shell-shaped demon core in his body began to revolve. It shone brightly, suppressing everything. Whether it was his restless true qi or his disorderly thoughts, they were all completely suppressed. His mind suddenly became clear, and spiritual energy gathered in his eyes. When he looked at the woman named Furong again, the layer of mist on her face immediately dispersed. That enchanting face suddenly became mediocre. It was not even as beautiful as the dancers beside her or the maids who served her. Even the expression on her face seemed to be extremely artificial. It was no longer as moving as it was a moment ago. This feeling was like when he saw some beauties on the internet after removing their makeup in his past life. It was a horrible sight to behold. However, it was much more ingenious. She could actually influence a person's senses, drawing out the most beautiful parts of a person's heart to move them. These people had not come to see this woman at all. They clearly wanted to see the woman in their hearts. This woman had shamelessly used the most beautiful parts of a person's heart. Was this the legendary arts of charm? Li Qingshan furrowed his eyebrows. He was not an idiot. He immediately understood the deep ill intentions behind this. Originally, he believed that with his strength, even if he could not move about freely in Jiaping City, there would be no opponent he could not deal with. As a result, he could enter the building fearlessly. He was confident that as long as he could control himself, no one would be able to harm him. However, the various tricks of the secular world were far more than he had imagined. It was said that various external demons would appear during the process of cultivation, messing with their minds and ruining their cultivation. Was this not what he was seeing right now? Then he looked at Diao Fei beside him. He basically stared at Hibiscus like he was infatuated. Hibiscus looked at Li Qingshan in surprise. She had never thought someone could escape from her arts of charm. Under the intense gaze of those eyes, she could not help but take a step back. There was a loud slap. Gu Jian and the brothel keeper glanced at each other. When they hurried into the room, they saw Li Qingshan standing there, slapping Diao Fei to the ground. There was a clear mark of 5 fingers on his face, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It was clear how vicious that slap had been. Diao Fei wanted to fight back in rage, but a hand like an iron pincer gripped his neck. A terrifying killing intent restricted his movements. He felt that if he dared to move, his neck would be broken. "What are you doing?" Li Qingshan carried him in front of Hibiscus. "Look carefully." Diao Fei had already subconsciously circulated his true qi. Anger and fear had broken his just-now state, and Hibiscus, in her shock, seemed to have forgotten to use her charm arts. And then, Diao Fei, like Li Qingshan just now, saw that shocking change and was instantly stunned. That was not his Anning. Anning was no longer here. The brothel keeper cried out in shock. "WW, what are you doing?" Gu Jian said righteously, "Stop." Li Qingshan loosened his grip. "His appearance earlier was just too ugly, so I couldn't help but hit him." Diao Fei collapsed on the ground. After quite a while, he said just now, "Thank you." As someone who came from a sect, he knew much more about charm arts than Li Qingshan. He knew what would happen if he fell for it. Once he was deeply intoxicated, even his parents and children would not be able to rouse him from his infatuation. Li Qingshan pointed at Hibiscus and said to the brothel keeper, "Make this ugly woman piss off, or I won't be able to hold myself back any longer." Hibiscus shrieked, "Just you?" She had already grown accustomed to using her charm arts to toy with men. Since when had she ever been treated like this? In particular, when he called her an ugly woman, it made her completely furious, but it only made her face twist and uglier. The brothel keeper said angrily, "Master Go, isn't this newcomer of yours a little too unruly? How could a measly first-layer Qi practitioner be so rude to her? If it were not for his identity as a Hawkwolf guard, she would have attacked him a long time ago." Li Qingshan suddenly vanished from where he was and appeared before Hibiscus. He raised his right arm and swung it viciously. Within 10 steps, a person could rival a country. Li Qingshan used his tough body to carry out this sentence perfectly. Although Hibiscus was a second-layer Qi practitioner, she was not skilled in battle as she was skilled in the arts of charm and sexual intercourse. She did not seem to think Li Qingshan would do something as despicable as hitting a woman before so many people. You fucking found a fake beauty to screw me over, and you're even saying I don't know the rules? You're in a bad mood, but I'm in a worse mood. The anger from having his feelings tricked and the embarrassment from almost falling for it all made his mood as horrible as it could get. His reaction was his arm turning into a blur as he forcefully lashed out with the crack of a whip. Hibiscus spun a few times on the spot like a spinning top. Half of her face swelled up and 2 teeth flew out. She collapsed on the ground, dazed. Chapter 122. Blood splattered across the building. As for the men, they all treated Farong as obediently as dogs. Never in their wildest dreams did they think she would take a slap from a man. The procuress struck out furiously. She filled her chubby hands with true qi and swung them towards Li Qingshan. Not only was Farong the courtesan of the brothel, but she was also her disciple. But to her surprise, Gu Jian blocked her way. The procuress forcefully pulled back her hands. You! Gu Jian said coldly, are you going to attack the Hawkwolf Guard? As long as Li Qingshan was still a Hawkwolf Guard, he could not just stand by and watch. This had to do with the dignity of the Hawkwolf Guard. Most importantly, he doubted whether the procuress could defeat Li Qingshan with her strength. The brothel would give Zhuozhibua a large number of pills and various women every year for Zhuozhibua to enjoy. As an errand boy, he would receive a share of the profits as well. He obviously did not want to see the brothel suffer. The procuress took in a few ragged breaths and said, all right. She pulled Farong, who was still in a daze, away. However, Li Qingshan sat back down. He said, hurry up. I'm still waiting for the next program. I don't think your brothel has anything like that, right? Brother Go, I'm still waiting. All he heard was Furong's shrill howl from outside. She finally returned to her senses. I'll kill him. I'll kill him. Gu Jian looked back, and his sunken face vanished. He smiled helplessly. Qingshan, if you don't like her, then don't like her. Why must you hit her? Women skilled in arts of charm aren't common. Even if I try it once in a while, it won't affect me at all. He felt so wrong that even Diao Fei doubted whether Gu Jian had done it on purpose. The whore. So what if I hit her? Li Qingshan leaned back against the soft cushion indifferently and raised his chin. A female attendant beside him plucked a grape in a hurry and carefully delivered it to his mouth. She was just like a scoundrel. This Western brothel actually dared to join hands with Zhuozhibua to harm him. He wanted to learn from Lu Tianyu. First, he wanted 10 caddies of lean meat, cut it into minced meat, without the least bit of fat on it. Then he wanted another 10 caddies of fatty meat, without the least bit of lean meat on it, also cut it into minced meat. Finally, he wanted another 10 caddies of inch of gold, cartilage, also cut it into minced meat, without the least bit of fat on it. Holy Church, if the women who came later were skinny, he would ask for a voluptuous one and slap the old procuress's face. If she was fat, he would have chosen the slim one, and he would have slapped the old procuress's face. However, this did not seem to be Commander Lu, but some crosstalk joke segment? I'll go take a look. When Gu Jian walked out of the door, anger surfaced on his face. He didn't expect that Lu Cheng's ultimate moves were actually unable to subdue a country bumpkin from the mountains. However, he couldn't turn hostile now. As long as Zhuozhibua didn't figure out the relationship between Li Qingshan and Gu Yenying, he wouldn't dare to turn hostile. And if Zhuozhibua didn't dare to turn hostile, he wouldn't dare to turn hostile. Most importantly, he was worried that even if he turned hostile, he might not be a match for this kid. The slap just now had shocked Gu Jian. Within 10 steps, if Li Qingshan suddenly attacked, it would be as fast as a tiger or a leopard. Even he dared not say whether or not he would be at a disadvantage. Was a physique practitioner really that strong? In less than a quarter of an hour, Gu Jian returned, followed by the old procuress. She had a smile on her face, as if nothing had happened. No one knew what Gu Jian had instructed, but he also brought along 7 or 8 young girls. No matter how thin or fat they were, they all had good looks. The oldest was no more than 16 or 17, and the youngest was only 14 or 15. Little brother, it seems like you don't like mature girls. These are all newly trained girls, and I guarantee that they are absolutely clean. Why don't you pick a few back to be your maids to warm your feet? The price is negotiable. The old procuress pinched the cheeks of a young girl beside her and introduced them to Li Qingshan. Those girls all looked at Li Qingshan, their eyes filled with hope. To be able to be redeemed and taken away before they could even put up a sign to receive customers, that was their good fortune. Not to mention that this person was a tough young man, and not a pot-bellied rich merchant or a skinny old man. Gu Jian said, I think you should have 1 or 2 people to serve you on the mountain. Such a big bed, one person can't finish lying on it. Seeing that he couldn't complete Zhuojibwa's task, he thought of another plan. Seeing that this kid seemed to be a person who valued friendship, as long as he had a burden by his side, he could use it to threaten him in the future. Holy Church looking at these young girls who were like mules waiting to be picked, Li Qingshan suddenly felt a sense of desolation. Looking at the fat old procuress again, he felt even more disgusted. He really wanted to hack her with a knife. But he also knew that in this era, brothels were a legitimate business. Many women who had given birth to girls, but because they valued boys more than girls, were unwilling to raise them or could not afford to raise them, so they were sent to brothels as a way to survive. Li Qingshan asked, Are all of you willing? The young girls looked at each other, then finally lowered their heads and said yes. Li Qingshan's interest was gone. He stood up and said, Let's call it a day, I want to go back to sleep. He walked out, and when he passed by a young girl, she stuffed a ball of paper into his hand. Qing Xiu gazed at the tall, broad figure eagerly. Ever since she was abducted here, so many years had passed. Originally, she had already despaired a long time ago, but Li Qingshan's slap had given her a sliver of hope once again, allowing her to do something bold and risky. He was different from other men. If it was him, he might report to the authorities and save her and her sisters. She heard that the district magistrate was a good official, and he would definitely help them. But she saw that Li Qingshan suddenly stood still, opened the ball of paper and asked her, Did you give this to me? Everyone's eyes focused on Qing Yu, especially the brothel keeper's eyes. When she saw the words on the paper, there was a hint of killing intent in her eyes. Qing Xiu lowered her head. She felt like there was a dagger on her back. She thought of the tragic fate of her sisters who wanted to escape or betray the brothel, and despair appeared on her face. Her heart was filled with regret, and she kept blaming Li Qingshan in her heart. Are you an idiot? Do you know how deep the water in the brothel is? This time, I'm dead because of you. Li Qingshan kept the ball of paper and patted Qing Yu's shoulder with a smile. I asked you just now, why didn't you say it? You should have said it earlier. This daddy has sharpened my sword for 10 years, and I'm full of chivalry, waiting to meet with injustice. He felt that he was very kind, and Qing Xiu's face became paler. The brothel keeper could see that Li Qingshan was a troublemaker, and she pulled Qing Xiu behind her. She has lost her mind, don't take it to heart. Qing Xiu had always been obedient, and she never resisted when she was asked to do something. The brothel keeper thought that she had trained her well enough, so she let her out to meet the guests. She didn't expect that she would do such a thing at such a critical moment. When she returned, she would definitely beat her to death as a warning to others. Li Qingshan said, Didn't you let me pick? I'll pick her. The brothel keeper said, Why are you still not taking her away? As she smiled at Li Qingshan, she said, There are plenty of girls in our building. It really isn't appropriate for you to choose this crazy one. She was tangled up in a messy manner. Immediately, 2 strong and sturdy guards escorted Qing Xiu out. Stop! Li Qingshan wanted to chase after her, but the fat body of the brothel keeper blocked his way. He wanted to go around her, but Gu Jian pulled his hand. Qingshan, where are you going? She's just a whore. That was what Li Qingshan had said earlier, but Li Qingshan immediately turned around and said, You're the whore. Let go of me. His arm shook, but how could Gu Jian resist Li Qingshan's strength? He immediately let go, and his face changed. What did you say? He was a mighty Hawkwolf guard, yet he had been called a whore, so he could not help but lose his temper. He could no longer hold back. The 2 guards both possessed martial arts. They seemed to be walking normally, but they moved extremely quickly. They arrived outside in the blink of an eye, merging into the crowd. Li Qingshan ignored him. he took a step forward and directly collided with a ball of fat. The brothel keeper felt like a rampaging elephant had collided with her. She smashed through the window and the railings of the corridor behind her, flying into the courtyard and falling straight down to the 7th floor. She shrieked in the air, "Stop him!" With a clap of her hand and a surge of true qi, her plump body drifted away, landing in the corridor of the 3rd floor. Li Qingshan had already made his way out through the hole the brothel keeper had created. All he saw was a crowd of people moving about, but Qing Xiu was nowhere to be seen. However, he sniffed and caught a hint of her scent. Among his 6 senses, the one that surpassed ordinary people the most was his sense of smell. For ordinary qi practitioners, as long as they cultivated their zhenqi and opened up their acupoints, their sense of sight and hearing would become extremely sharp. They would be able to see flies flying within 100 zhang away and hear ants walking within 100 zhang. However, their sense of smell would not improve much. It would not even be as good as a stray dog on the street. This was the limitation of nature. However, Li Qingshan's sense of smell had already become even sharper than a dog's. He followed the trail left behind by the scent. "Where are you going, bro?" A few gorgeously dressed brothel girls with heavy makeup came out of nowhere and filled the corridor. One by one, they wrapped around him and hugged his hands and feet. Li Qingshan said, "Get lost." He did not have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. With a burst of true qi, he sent the girls flying. Thud, 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 thud down to the 6th floor. A sturdy guard dressed in yellow rushed out of the room beside him as if he had heard the brothel keeper's call. He immediately saw Li Qingshan and stood in front of him. Judging by his aura, he seemed to be a first-rate expert in Jianghu. He had just thrown out a first-rate expert today, so his arrogance was at its peak. When he saw Li Qingshan striding towards him, although he could tell that he was a qi practitioner, he was only at the 1st layer of qi practitioner. He was confident that he could fight him and even win. He had never paid attention to those people who trained their qi directly because of their natural endowments. Thus, he used the voice he used to berate the brothel patrons and shouted, "Stop right there. It's fine if you're a weak woman. You're just being ordered around by others. But you're a good man, yet you're helping the wicked. You deserve to die." As Li Qingshan spoke, his feet did not stop moving. Unknowingly, the wind-entwining saber was already in his hand. The snow-white blade flashed. The guard in yellow was just about to attack when he felt a chill on his neck. Then he flew up. The world spun around him and he saw his own body. The guards were just about to rush forward when they saw their leader's head being sent flying by the blood spurting out from his neck. Immediately, they felt as if their feet were nailed to the ground. They did not dare to take another step forward. Chapter 123. Splattering blood, middle, Li Qingshan lifted his leg and kicked the headless corpse downstairs. While the men and women downstairs were still in a daze from the madam's scream, a bloody corpse suddenly fell in front of them. After a moment of silence, someone screamed at the top of their lungs, "Murder!" The people downstairs immediately burst into an uproar. What a big wet dream, but it was shattered by the shock. Li Qingshan laughed out loud when he saw this. He turned around and saw Qing Xiu's emerald green gown. She had already been brought to the opposite 4th floor. Li Qingshan leaped into the air like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey or an eagle hunting for a rabbit. Just as Qing Xiu was at the edge of despair, a strong gust of wind blew against her face. When she looked again, Li Qingshan was already standing in front of her, sheathing his long sword. The 2 guards who were holding her hostage spat out blood and fell backwards. Qing Xiu stammered for a long time but couldn't say anything. He actually dared to kill someone in the brothel. She had never seen such an audacious person in her life. This was completely different from what she had imagined at the beginning. Li Qingshan said, "If you have any grievances, feel free to tell me." The brothel was in a mess. Guards rushed out from all directions and corners. Qing Xiu hurriedly complained, I was captured by them. I didn't come willingly. If I didn't want to, I would be beaten and not given food. I would have to practice martial arts. If I didn't, I would still be beaten and not given food." "Bitch, shut up." Amidst the roar, the madam directly smashed through the floorboards and came to the 4th floor. She met Li Qingshan's murderous gaze head-on. "You came at the right time," Li Qingshan shouted. The wind-entwining saber formed a wind blade in the air and slashed at the madam's face. The madam had never seen such a fierce person. Without saying a word, he directly attacked. She often welcomed people in the brothel. She had forgotten when was the last time she personally attacked someone. She couldn't even use half of her vital energy. With a scream, she fell back to the 3rd floor. Holy Church looking up, she saw Li Qingshan appear above the large hole, both hands gripping the blade as he chopped down. She didn't even have the time to take out the talismans from her 100 treasures pouch to protect herself, or perhaps she was scared silly. She instinctively rolled on the ground, rolling away like a ball. One was good at fighting, the other was not. One relied on his powerful physique to kill a level 2 Qi disciple head-on. One of them was focused on the Tao of dual cultivation and the art of the bedroom. Although she was in the 3rd layer of the aura refining realm, her battle prowess was only at the 2nd layer. Blood spurted out as the wind-entwining saber sliced off a large chunk of flesh from her buttocks. The procuress squealed like a pig being slaughtered. She lost all will to fight. Li Qingshan didn't wait to land on the ground. He stepped on the wall and used the momentum to fly out. He caught up with the procuress and stepped on her back. He smiled viciously and said, "Old hag, let's see where you can run to." If the procuress dared to make even the slightest movement, she would feel that foot pressing down on her like an iron pole. All the bones in her body were about to be broken. A sharp blade was placed right next to her face, causing her to not dare to move at all. A sharp sword stabbed towards her from behind. Before the blade even reached her, it spat out a 3 feet long green light. Hibiscus held the spirit sword with a vicious expression and stabbed it straight towards Li Qingshan's back. Good. Li Qingshan wasn't surprised, but happy instead. He slightly tilted his body and dodged the blade. Even the procuress, who was in the 3rd layer of the aura refining realm, was no match for him, let alone Hibiscus, who was only in the 2nd layer of the aura refining realm. His left hand formed a claw and grabbed Hibiscus's neck, pulling her in front of him. He stepped on one and grabbed the other in his hand, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Li Qingshan pointed the wind-entwining saber at the procuress. As a Qi practitioner, you are above tens of thousands of people. You live a luxurious life, yet you still want to do such a heartless thing. You really deserve to die. The procuress screamed in fear, "Hero, spare me." "I won't spare you." Li Qingshan was about to swing his saber down. 2 voices rang out at the same time. One was Cui Jian, but the other wasn't Yao Fei. Instead, it was a middle-aged man wearing a sapphire blue gown. Like a withered leaf, he floated down to the 3rd floor. He was actually an expert in the 5th layer of the aura refining realm. He had a feminine face and said darkly, "Customer, you seem to be very dissatisfied with our service." St. Hall. He was the real owner of this building, Zhao Liangqing. Normally, he only let the procuress greet guests outside while he hid behind the scenes, using the women as human cauldrons to cultivate. If Zhuozhibua wanted to take care of a newcomer, of course he would have to go through him to set up this trap. However, he didn't care too much. How could he have a good ending after being tricked by a vulture like Zhuozhibua? He thought that Hibiscus would also be easy to capture, but he didn't expect such a sudden change to occur. Li Qingshan predicted that if he didn't use his demonic energy, he would be able to defeat a 2nd layer of the aura refining realm. He also had a high chance of winning against a 3rd layer of the aura refining realm, but it was hard to say against a 4th layer of the aura refining realm. Against a 5th layer of the aura refining realm, there was absolutely no chance of winning. He called out, "Good Jian, get our big brother Zhua here. I've found a nest of bandits that force women into prostitution. Why would we, the mighty Hawkwolf Guard, fear a chicken head like you?" His shout was filled with true energy and shattered a few wine cups nearby. Many people's ears were ringing. Big brother Zhua? Gu Jian staggered and almost lost his footing. He had personally witnessed Li Qingshan's arrogant attitude toward Zhuozhibua, yet he called him Big Brother Zhua now. He was clearly using Zhuozhibua and the Hawkwolf Guard as a shield. Zhao Liangqing frowned heavily as well. Although Li Qingshan had demonstrated strength that surpassed regular Qi practitioners, he was confident he could kill him. However, he was afraid to take action. It was not only because of the two hostages beneath Li Qingshan's feet, but also because of his identity as a Hawkwolf Guard. People from the Hawkwolf Guard did not die. On the contrary, due to the various dangerous missions, the casualty rate was quite high. If they died during missions or assassinations, they would be unable to find the culprit and the matter would be left unresolved. It would be treated as an unresolved case. However, if he killed a Hawkwolf Guard in public, that would be challenging the authority of the Hawkwolf Guard, and he would be hunted down by the entire world. Even Zhuozhibua would not spare him. Instead, he would come to kill him first and draw a clear line between them. If he were an independent cultivator, perhaps he would still be bold enough to kill someone out of anger, but he had a clan as great as Lu Cheng, so he became even more cautious. Li Qingshan snickered. Just as he had expected, the wolf hide really did have some use. Only an idiot would be a hawk or a dog of the empire who did not know how to use his identity as a hawk or a dog of the empire. If Zhuozhibua wanted to be his big brother, then he would let him be. Zhao Liangqing said, "Please release the people from my sect. They're all criminals who have forced women into prostitution and harmed young girls. I can't let them go." "Oh right, don't leave either. I represent the Hawkwolf Guard to open a case for investigation. You can remain silent, but everything you say will be used as evidence in court." Li Qingshan had no idea what to say either, so he just spouted some nonsense he had heard from his past life. He completely ignored Zhao Liangqing's powerful strength as a fifth-layer Qi practitioner. Zhao Liangqing paled in anger. "Forced women into prostitution? What evidence do you have?" Li Qingshan said, "I have witnesses and material evidence." Zhao Liangqing said sinisterly, "Where's your proof?" Li Qingshan's eyes suddenly narrowed. Two guards held the dejected Qing Xiu hostage. Zhao Liangqing pinched Qing Xiu's chin. "You really do have some beauty. No wonder he lost his temper over you. Can you release her now?" Qing Xiu's eyes brimmed with tears as she stared straight at Li Qingshan. "I'm done for now." Li Qingshan said, "That's one of the girls in your building. What has she got to do with me?" Zhao Liangqing said, "Oh, fair enough. There's no point in keeping a femme fatale like her." He placed his hand on Qing Xiu's shoulder, but before he could even exert any force, Qing Xiu let out a miserable shriek. However, it was immediately drowned out by an even more miserable shriek, frightening Qing Xiu so much that she shut her mouth. Li Qingshan raised his blade and chopped off the procuress' arm. His eyes reddened as he said, "Why don't you try touching her again?" Heroes who would lay down their arms and surrender after being threatened by the enemy with a hostage were all idiots. Li Qingshan would never do something as stupid as that. "If you're vicious, then I'll be even more vicious." Gu Jian finally gave up on dealing with this matter by himself. This bastard possessed a sense of viciousness and wildness that came from the mountains and forests. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Everything that had happened today was a counterattack against Zhuozhibua's trap, and the matter had completely slipped out of his control. He crushed a talisman in his hand. It was a talisman that the Hawkwolf Guard used to call for help, to show that he was in danger. Zhao Liangqing glared at Li Qingshan. He had not done anything yet, but he was no longer bold enough to do anything. He could clearly tell from Li Qingshan's gaze that if he killed Qing Xiu, Li Qingshan would be bold enough to cut off two heads for him to see. That would be an almost irreparable loss to him. On one side was a measly Qing Cui, and on the other side were two of his important subordinates. He obviously had no idea which was more important. His eyes flickered, and he circulated his cultivation method. In everyone's eyes, the rather effeminate landlord Zhao had suddenly changed. He had become extremely terrifying, like a terrifying demon from the legends. His malevolent aura directly overwhelmed them, and the guards directly collapsed on the ground from fright. He was almost roaring, "I said release them." In the sect, apart from using arts of charm to conjure statues of jade women to charm everyone, there were also other uses. It could also be used in the opposite manner, conjuring the image of a demon to frighten everyone. They were all techniques that could directly shake up a person's soul. With that, the noisy building immediately fell silent. Everyone felt a great fear descend upon them. They did not even dare to breathe loudly, let alone shout or run. Even Gu Jian was afraid to look at Zhao Liangqing's face, so just what kind of pressure did Li Qingshan, who was being stared at by him, endure? However, Li Qingshan only smiled gently. I said release them. He was a demon in the first place, and his cultivation was even greater than Zhao Liangqing's. Charm was very effective against him, as his body was much tougher than ordinary people. He had to use the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to suppress it. However, threatening him was just displaying one's slight skill before an expert. He did not even need to use the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. You want to scare me? Do you believe I won't show my true form and scare you to death? Seeing that intimidation was useless, all Zhao Liangqing could do was give up. He stared straight at Li Qingshan. If his gaze could be a sword, Li Qingshan would have been pierced already. What are you looking at? If you keep looking, I'll dig your eyes out. Li Qingshan gestured at the procuress below him with his blade. What do you want? Li Qingshan pointed at Qing Xiu. Give me back my witness. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.